Hello and welcome to the Opposition Perspective. I'm your host, Chris Gallagher, and I'm delighted to say I'm joined by our very good friend, Glen Schreuder from the Red Tinted Glasses Aberdeen podcast. Hello, Glen. How are you, sir?
Hello, Chris. Thank you very much for the welcome back onto the podcast. Very well. When I thought you guys were having a bad season, I thought you very kindly handed the baton over to ourselves instead.
Wow. The last time we spoke, we had...
Who was your manager?
Yeah, we had different managers. We had different players. We had different expectations for the season. Yeah, we can touch on what your thoughts are on Celtic. Our thoughts are on Aberdeen. I mean, what the hell's going on?
Answers on a postcard, please. I mean, it's fair to say since that day in May, because it would be amiss of me to get that mention in.
Fair point.
We have failed to capitalise on the pitch, off the pitch. Fair play to the club. They've commercially cashed in. But unfortunately, the product on the pitch has not lived up to the expectation and the opportunity that should have come, obviously, with the group stage football that came with Europe. Unfortunately, we got the raw end of the deal with that draw. I think it was statistically the worst one. And the league form that Jimmy Thelin had never improved. I always felt that had we not won that cup final, he would have probably been shown the door in the summer. I then thought, off the back of winning it, it granted him the European fixtures, which he then proceeded to get, and probably was then afforded a few fixtures after to see if he could turn things around in the league. When that wasn't the case, it kind of felt like the time was right. Unfortunately, just we don't seem to be a team that is a team. We've spoken on the podcast many a time about us having talented individuals. There's just no cohesive nature that's put us on a solid run of form, and we're now facing a set of league fixtures that really will make or break whether or not we join the likes of yourselves in the top six.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking at that. 7th at the moment. You've got one win in your last 6.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus. That's
full of good news.
Yeah, that I didn't realise it was that. I mean, I watched the Rangers game a couple of weeks ago, and I thought it was a pretty poor game of football, but I thought Aberdeen were there or thereabouts in terms of just challenging. I think Rangers are kind of on the up and stuff, but how's your home form been recently? And obviously it's a hell of a season.
Awful. Truth be told, obviously we beat Livingston, but by and large our home form has not been the best. There is no Fortress Pittodrie. It's funny that Rangers game, you spoke about in terms of competing. I was actually furious with the way we competed in that game. Playing either side of the old firm, we should not be making it a training game for the opposition, and that's for me what it felt like. It was inexcusable for Rangers to kind of come up here and stroll that game. We always get accused of lying down to yourselves. Well, it very much felt like we took that personally and decided to lie down to them on that occasion. And for me, that was just unacceptable. And I'll be really interesting to see how we approach the game tomorrow night, which I know we'll come on to because we're a bit depleted going into that. But obviously Celtic come up here with an exceptional record at Pittodrie as well. So I think Phil said on the podcast previewing the game, it feels like we're sitting ducks in Martin O'Neill's path. And I can't help but share that sentiment.
In terms of obviously Jimmy Thelin leaving or being sacked, obviously, what is it with the director of football? He seems a bit wild. What's going on there?
Yeah, wild. I know that it's really interesting, the whole Jimmy Thelin departure, because I've been told on a few occasions that he actually had previously offered his resignation when things weren't going right, and the club never took it and kind of tried to instill the faith. Obviously, Lutz Pfannenstiel came in and there was talk whether or not him and Jimmy could work together. Yeah, I think wild is definitely, from certain sources in the club, is the best way to describe Lutz. Look, you know yourself what happens in Scottish football when anybody tries something different, it's going to get shot down in flames. And there's some things that he says that I'm like, you're pushing the boat out here. You need to look at that loan deal with Lyle Cameron, and he was obviously very proud to tell Scott Burns his close working relationship with Danny Roll was a key factor, and that unfortunately doesn't go down well with our support.
Nah.
So, he's still learning Scottish football. I have to say my jury is still out on him personally. I'll maybe reserve that until we appoint the manager. But, in terms of some of the recruitments that we've brought in January, they point to him being a key factor in that. But I feel we're just using that as a buzzword right now to try and generate a sense of feel-good factor around the place. The likes of Dave Cormack and Alan Burrows are staying very quiet behind the scenes. I don't think our off-the-field issues are as well publicised and maybe as up in the air as yours, but there's definitely grumblings beginning there.
Yeah, the Lyle Cameron one I thought was interesting. Whenever a player rejects a club and then very quickly goes to that club, maybe 6 months to a year down the line.
Yeah,
we've had that with Kelechi Iheanacho, who knocked us back, and he's actually kind of worked out pretty well, other than the fact he's always injured. Has Lyle Cameron kind of put the sort of grumbles to rest?
I mean, well, he came in and Tony Doherty gave him man of the match in the first game, which just felt inevitable because Tony Doherty couldn't do anything but sing his praises during that commentary game of the Wraith game. But again, I go back to the comments on Lutz. He said, his desire to join us, and I'm like, well, he wasn't desire to join us 6 months ago when he chased the money at Ibrox to go and sit on the bench.
Yeah.
So, again, key buzzwords thrown out there just didn't sit well for me, but he is doing his talking on the pitch and he hasn't, done anything to, go, oh, we shouldn't be getting another Rangers player in and this is why. But he's also not exactly been our best player. He's just come in and the bar is not exactly high to beat, Chris, now across the board for us.
Hey, we're exactly the same, man. It's
feel like we're singing from the same hymn book.
We just keep winning. I don't know why. I mean, if you look at our kind of underlying stats and stuff and how we're actually performing, I mean, you probably look at Celtic and obviously you see the results and you think that's obviously quite intimidating. But our home XG against Falkirk was the lowest we've had on record against a team that wasn't Rangers domestically. So we're not in the greatest of shape. We have brought some players in. That leads me to ask, what about Aberdeen? What business have you done in January?
So today, we were obviously recording this the day after the deadline day. We brought in Tommy McIntyre, who's a free agent from Portsmouth. He'd been on loan at Bradford for the early part of the season. I think I've seen somewhere quoted though he's only played 16 minutes of football prior to November, so we'll certainly come on to that when it comes into the game itself. Dennis Geiger's joined from Hoffenheim, not played this season. Arimo Aziz has joined from Kaiserslautern, so that's two centre midfielders that we've brought in. We've brought in a goalkeeper from Norway who's conceded 53 goals last season. Just what we need when we're looking to shore up Dimitar Mitov, who keeps flapping at anything into his box. Who else have we brought in? Is that it? I feel, and Olasanya, who used to play for St Mirren, we've brought him in as well. You can tell how out of tune I am with the club right now and the apathy that is well set in, that's how much I'm across our January transfer dealings.
Yeah, I can't even remember the guys we've brought in. I don't know. Yeah. Don't really care. So
yeah, sooner the season's over the better.
Oh, dude, absolutely. In terms of Olasanya, I think's quite a good pickup. I was really impressed with him at St Mirren. Obviously, going to America is a different kind of kettle of fish. Is he? I know he's had at least one game, or maybe
two now.
How's he performing?
Yeah. Well, he's only been utilised as a substitute against Livingston off the bench with about 5 to go. Probably should have scored in that game, but hard to play against when it was 10v10 and Livingston just seemed to abandon all sort of formation and ideology under Marvin Bartley. So really interested to see how that appointment works out for them. And then laterally against Kilmarnock, he comes on at half-time replacing Bilalovic, and he was played as a winger. Interestingly, against Livingston, he was played as our out-and-out striker. But again, not long after he comes on, we go down to 10 men, so largely ineffective, but the only player that we used as an outball to chase. Yeah,
it's interesting. I think, obviously with your director of football being German, is that, maybe Scandinavia, Germany, Holland, are these markets you think you'll be shopping in a little bit more?
It very much feels that way, alongside the inevitable sense that we're away to get a German manager.
Uwe Rosler, maybe?
Well, I think is it Gisdol, the former Hoffenheim manager, is another name. Uwe Rosler's an interesting one. He ruled himself out, and then Anthony Joseph decided that he'd ruled himself back in. So I'm taking that one with a pinch of salt. The biggest concern for me is that Stephen Robinson's name's still floating about there in the final five.
Is that because of what happened with Jim Goodwin? Is it a hangover from that?
I bloody hope not. Well, the interesting one is that, again, Lutz has come out and said, the new manager needs to fit the philosophy of this football club to play attacking football. And I just don't see how Stephen Robinson fits that mould.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. In regard to... Oh, question for you. Polvara.
Polvara, yeah.
Polvara, sorry.
Or Palaversa. There's two.
Yeah. The American one?
The American one, yeah. Polvara.
Yeah, he's left, right?
He has, yeah.
I've got a friend who lives in St. Louis. What did you make of his time at Aberdeen?
Well, I mean, again, not to mention that day in May, but, goes down as a hero for a really iconic moment in the Scottish Cup, him falling to his knees, stepping up to take the penalty. I loved him. A really humble guy off the pitch, had a lot of time for myself. On the pitch, never really got the opportunity, but in terms of his presence in big games, he really stepped up in European competition. Latterly this season was playing at centre back, so a bit of versatility in there. I have to say I was disappointed to see us lose him, but given he was out of contract in the summer, like Leighton Clarkson, it's good to see the club recoup a bit of money before these players leave for nothing.
Yeah, Leighton Clarkson, obviously he's went to Blackpool. Disappointed, or was it the right move?
Hugely disappointed in that one. I think his departure felt inevitable under Jimmy Thelin, but I thought once the manager left, he would get more opportunity. But again, the club have obviously decided to cash in. But for me, I'd actually, if any of your listeners listen to our podcast, will have known that I had Leighton Clarkson starting for us on Wednesday. So that's gone straight out the window.
On Wednesday, how are you feeling about it? Obviously, the last game was against Kilmarnock, where obviously a 3-0 defeat. In terms of that result, what was the performance like? I know there was a red card, was there?
There was, yeah, but we were absolutely shocking. We're speaking about the fact you have to build on victories, try and create momentum going into, obviously yourselves were playing Falkirk, Hibs were playing the other team from Glasgow. It was an opportunity for us to, gain on the top six, and we failed to capitalise on that. Again, building on that momentum, as I've said, the first 20 minutes, we were just run over by Kilmarnock. For a team that haven't won in 17 games, for me, that was simply unacceptable. Dimitar Mitov went wandering inside 5 minutes, and I can't remember who it was for Kilmarnock that rounded him, but should have scored, somehow missed the open goal. He then punches from a corner that he should collect, punches it straight to Dominic Thompson, who's ball into the box. Brad Lyons is saying he got a touch, but I think it finds the bottom corner. And yet again, we concede from a ball into the box. That is my concern now that you've added, is it Krankava to your ranks up top?
Schwanchera.
Yeah, him. He looks pacey, but also looks a target.
Yeah.
And we are so vulnerable from balls into the box and set pieces. I feel right now we're going to concede at every opportunity. We then concede 90 seconds after going 1-0 down, and it really felt like game over. Graham Shinnie got booked within 5 minutes and was a walking red card. Peter Leven admitted he should have taken him off at half-time and didn't because we had momentum. By momentum, he clearly meant we had 2 Sclaft shots on goal. We had momentum after 20 minutes for about 5-10 minutes, but after that, that was it. Killy get the third goal, but really the second half was just background noise for me. At home, it was another unacceptable, gutless and spineless performance from this team that we've often seen too much of, and we're now left, facing a Celtic side hungry for the title, I'm sure, and as I've said already, a venue where you've enjoyed plenty of success over the years.
Yeah, and we do have a few new players in, obviously, to kind of really all in the forward positions. In terms of, you said there's maybe going to be players unavailable. Who's on your injury list at the moment?
Well, this is a thing, because again, we spoke about on the podcast you guys strengthening. I'm stunned you've still got Arne Engels, how you've turned down that money.
So we are very surprised. Put it that way.
But our injury and problems really lie defensively. Mats Knuster, who's probably going to be our player of the year, looks set to be out for the rest of the season due to the fact that he headbutted the AstroTurf on Saturday in a very horrible injury. Bruce Anderson did the Harry Kane, backing into the defender, and Mats Knuster fell head first and knocked himself out. But the club have confirmed after a couple of nights in hospital he'll be out for a long time. So looking likely that we'll have 2 new centre backs lining up against yourselves. Jack Milne serving the second suspension after his red card against Livingston. So looking like Tommy McIntyre will come straight into the Aberdeen team alongside Sivert Nielsen. So we've got no pace defensively. So Graham Shinney's also now suspended, which is a concern. Stuart Armstrong looked really leggy. Nicky Devlin's looking leggy. So for us, when you're strengthening in the forward area, you've got the pace of Maeda, that new guy who you pronounce much better than me.
Questionable.
Looked pacey in the game against Hearts that I watched. I liked his movement in the game against Falkirk as well. I'm very concerned about us defensively on Wednesday night.
Interesting. Obviously, we don't know how Martin O'Neill's going to line up in regards to who we play up front. We've brought some new players in, but it's do they start? Do they sit on the bench? So that'll be interesting to have them on the bench. We've had a horrible set of benches for the last, whole season probably. So having game changers on the bench, I think, is probably the best for us. In terms of key players for you, obviously you mentioned Stuart Armstrong, who's known to the Celtic support. Shenny not being available, that's kind of a positive for us. Is there anyone else that you could highlight that might, string something together?
Well, obviously, last time out at Pittodrie, Toby Keskinen was pivotal. He scored last time at Parkhead, Kenan Bilalovic. So both our wingers have got to be pivotal. It will really be interesting to see whether or not Dennis Geiger comes in, and there's a lot being mentioned about him, certainly from Derek Ray on social media, about how he could be a big signing. But yeah, we've got to look to the wingers to be creative. I'm assuming Kevin Nisbet's going to lead the line again, and we know what he can do in between the sticks. I still feel Celtic's defence is there to be got at if we can get at them, but it's doing that consistently. We've changed formation from what we used to have under Jimmy Thelin, so we're now playing a back four. I just wonder if the injuries that we've got in suspensions to that usual lineup, if we do change to a back three on Wednesday night and bring in Alexander Jensen or Dylan Lobben on the right hand side and give ourselves a bit more pace. And the one I'm really interested to see how he does on Wednesday night after impressing against Livingston, of course, is young Mitchell Frame, who we signed from the B team in the summer. I
know obviously he came into the frame. He came into
the picture. I've made all the puns.
How's he performed? I know he's only maybe had a few games. Has he looked okay?
Yeah, obviously made his debut against Wraith, and then we really saw him against Livingston getting his first start, and he was an absolute standout. Him and Toby Keskinen really dovetailed beautifully on that left wing, causing Livingston no end of problems. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to do the exact same to yourselves, because with the greatest respect to Livingston, you're an unbelievable class above. But he looks good, he looks confident on the ball, and the guy I go to the football with said, he reminded him of Andy Robertson, the way he runs, the way he gets his head down, looks to get the ball into the box. And I'm like, well, if we can get the next Andy Robertson on our books, happy days. I guess he hasn't really been tested too defensively in the games against Kilmarnock and Livingston. So I think, tomorrow will be a real test for him.
Yeah, he was someone I think that big sections of the support wanted to see more of. He obviously played for us against Feyenoord, and it'll be interesting to see how he develops. What's the mood like with the support? Is it just a sort of wanting the season over, or do you want to get into that top six? Do you want to really kind of push for the end of the season? Is there any levels of positivity, or is it all quite negative?
Largely negative, if I'm being brutally honest. I think I called this a season-defining week. Obviously, we had to recruit in January, strengthen to give us that opportunity to push towards the top six. We've got yourselves tomorrow night. before travelling to Dundee United and Fir Park in the league. So it's a tough set of fixtures to try and get into that top six. But I feel Saturday's fixture against Motherwell is what makes this week season defining, because if we go out with the Scottish Cup this week on top of losing to yourselves, it very much could feel like our season's over, because potentially going 8 points behind Falkirk in that race for the top six, I don't see where this team's clawing that back. And then apathy will very much kick in, and it'll be a case of, right, can we get the new manager in maybe to try and give us some hope for next season?
Just in regard to Peter Levine, Peter
Levine, yeah. Mm-hmm.
How does he set up? Do you think Aberdeen will be aggressive and attack Celtic, or will they sit off? What do you think the approach will be?
Well, I won't put my tinfoil hat on and appease some elements of the Celtic support that say, with him being a former Rangers man, he'll be more attacking towards Celtic. But he obviously had an excellent game plan that day at Hampden when we took you to penalties in that enthralling Scottish Cup tie. I think from my own point of view, I'll be furious if we set up in a similar manner to how we set up against Rangers at home and invited the pressure on, purely because we just can't defend at this moment in time. I really need to see this Aberdeen team take the game to Celtic, purely because I also want a reaction based off of how we performed on Saturday.
Yeah.
Leben said himself he was angry, the performance was unacceptable, we were second to every ball, there was no fight and there was no desire. So if that's the words of your manager after defeat, I'm expecting us to come out the blocks roaring on Wednesday night. I think the conditions are going to be awful, so the park probably not the best either. So I'm not expecting a glamorous game of football, but if we can win that war of attrition, it'll get a little bit of belief back into the support.
Great stuff. What's your expectations in terms of scoreline? I know you're really just looking for a reaction, but scoreline predictions.
Well, I'll just go with what I put in one of my predictor chats, and I went with 3-0 Celtic.
That's a fair point. Listen, it's been a joy. We need a strong Aberdeen, so hopefully Aberdeen get back to what you were doing before. In regard to Celtic, from an outsider's perspective, any comment on how Celtic are?
Where do you want me to start, Chris? I mean, it's just unbelievable how you guys have turned this season into... It feels comedy looking from the outside in. There's elements, of course, I know there's sections of your support disgruntled with the way the club's being run and the lack of finances, but we would love to be in your position, still challenging for the title and being unhappy with the board. But I do get, obviously, there's a bigger pressure in the bullfish that is, Glasgow, and the pressures that come with that. I think the appointment of Nancy, and when you put him in, was laughable to say the least.
Yeah.
He should have never been at that Hearts game he was almost set up to fail, I feel. Whether or not he would have had any success if he came in post League Cup final, you never know in these things. But it just never seemed right from an outsider looking in. And for me as well, again, maybe a contentious one amongst the Celtic support, but as a natural Scottish football fan, I would love to see the Green Brigade back, because there's that atmosphere that comes. I'm sure they'll probably find a way to be in attendance at Pittodrie tomorrow night, but watching sports scene, and it just looks odd, the empty seats there. There's nothing better with Scottish football, and seeing the title race that's now developing, you want that atmosphere. And that was missing the last time, obviously, I watched the Old Firm game as well. It is odd. And I think, fans will win at the end of the day. That's how I see it.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting to get your perspective on it. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the game. Hopefully it'll be a good game of football.
At least one of us are.
I mean, I see I'm looking forward to it. My God, that Falkirk game, we were absolutely battered. I know we won.
Well, again, seeing, obviously I never watched the game. I've seen the highlights, but, again, reading some of the comments, it gives me hope that there's chinks in that Celtic armour. You aren't, all guns blazing, but neither are we. So it's two idiots fighting, it feels like it's going to be at one point.
Yeah, I think that's how it might be. But listen, Glenn, it's been a joy as always. Red Tinted Glasses podcast, fantastic stuff. We'll speak to you again soon, sir.
Cheers, Chris. Pleasure as always.